In the winter of 1943, while Europe lay torn between retreating German armies and advancing Allied forces, a war of shadows began. One that would never make the front pages, but would determine the fate of D-Day. It was a war not of tanks or planes, but of whispers, radio signals, and lies. In the dim offices of London's Whitehall, a small group of officers under the London Controlling Section began to design what would become one of the greatest deceptions in modern military history, Operation Fortitude. The Allies faced a monumental problem. The invasion of Nazi-occupied France was inevitable, but where? For months, Hitler's high command had obsessed over the narrowest point of the English Channel, the Pas de Calais, as the logical site for an attack. Its ports were strong, its beaches broad, and its proximity to England made it the obvious choice. The real target, however, lay 200 miles west, the quiet beaches of Normandy. To succeed, the Allies had to convince Hitler that Calais was still the target, even as a massive invasion force gathered elsewhere. If they failed, tens of thousands of soldiers would die on the beaches. The London Controlling Section, led by Colonel John Bevan, was tasked with orchestrating this illusion. Bevan's team operated in secrecy, creating a plan that extended across Britain, a symphony of false signals, phantom armies, and double agents. They called it Operation Bodyguard, and Fortitude was its beating heart. Within this operation, two branches emerged: Fortitude North, to suggest an invasion of Norway, and Fortitude South, the crucial deception designed to protect Normandy. To the men on the ground, the war was fought with bullets and blood. But for Bevan's agents, victory would depend on psychology, on predicting how Adolf Hitler would think. The German leaders' belief that Calais was the key to invasion would become their greatest weapon. Every telegram, every movement of a fake unit, every rumor planted among civilians was calculated to exploit that obsession. The deception began with the construction of a phantom army, the first US Army Group, or FUSAG. On paper, it was a mighty force commanded by none other than General George S. Patton, the flamboyant, aggressive commander whom Hitler respected and feared above all others. To the Germans, Patton was the embodiment of American strength, and his absence from any real front line seemed suspicious. The Allies made sure it stayed that way. Across the English countryside in Kent and Sussex, the illusion took shape. Inflatable Sherman tanks glistened in the sun. Wooden aircraft lined rural airfields. Trucks circled endlessly to simulate troop movements. Dummy landing craft bobbed off the coast, while fake radio operators transmitted streams of coded chatter day and night. From the air, it was convincing. To any reconnaissance pilot peering through the clouds, southeast England looked alive with invasion readiness. But deception on this scale required more than props. It demanded storytellers. British intelligence officers under MI5's double-cross system had turned a network of captured German agents into unwitting participants in the ruse. Men like Juan Pujol Garcia, codenamed Garbo, began feeding carefully crafted reports to the Abwehr, Germany's intelligence service. His dispatches were rich with detail. Regiment names, convoy times, even troop morale. Every word he sent reinforced the illusion that Patton's massive army was preparing to strike Calais. By spring 1944, the illusion had become so intricate that even Allied officers outside the inner circle could be fooled. Maps were printed showing entire divisions that didn't exist. Clerks typed fake orders, and radio operators staged accidental leaks. What began as deception had evolved into performance, a vast stage production in which every soldier, every signal, every whisper played a role. Meanwhile, Hitler's spies in occupied Europe reported increased British activity in the southeast. The Luftwaffe, limited by fuel shortages and Allied air superiority, rarely flew reconnaissance over Normandy, leaving the deception unchallenged. The German 15th Army remained stationed near Calais, heavily fortified and waiting for an attack that would never come. Even as Allied planners at Schaff, the Supreme Headquarters Allied Expeditionary Force, refined the invasion details, the deception grew. Meetings in underground war rooms were filled with tension. What if the Germans saw through the lie? What if Hitler moved his panzer divisions to Normandy too soon? Every delay, every uncertainty could mean disaster. The stakes were enormous. Operation Fortitude wasn't just about misleading Hitler. It was about saving the lives of soldiers who would storm the beaches on D-Day. Eisenhower himself understood that deception was as vital as firepower. In war, he once said, "Truth is so precious that she should always be attended by a bodyguard of lies." Those lies were about to be tested. As the calendar turned to May 1944, Allied invasion fleets massed quietly along the southern coast, hidden behind the veil of secrecy. The world waited, unaware that the success of the largest amphibious invasion in history would depend on whether a handful of British officers could convince Adolf Hitler of a ghost. And in the halls of Berlin, the Führer remained certain. Calais was the key. But the storm that would prove him wrong was already forming over Normandy. The deception was in motion, and the greatest illusion of World War II had just begun. By the spring of 1944, southern England had become the world's largest stage, a landscape of illusion carefully crafted to mislead one man, Adolf Hitler. The centerpiece of this grand deception was Operation Fortitude South, a scheme so audacious it seemed impossible to pull off. Its mission: convince German intelligence that the Allied invasion force was massing in southeastern England, preparing to strike at Pas-de-Calais. And at the heart of this phantom army stood a name that carried weight in every German war room: General George S. Patton. Patton, known for his volcanic temper and flamboyant leadership, was both a legend and a weapon. After being relieved of command for slapping a wounded soldier in Sicily, he had become a controversial figure. To the Germans, however, he remained America's most aggressive commander, the one man they were certain would lead any major invasion of Europe. The Allies exploited that belief perfectly. Officially, Patton was placed in command of the 1st US Army Group, FUSAG, headquartered in southeastern England. In reality, FUSAG didn't exist. Across the counties of Kent and Sussex, British engineers, artists, and soldiers of the Royal Engineers Camouflage Unit went to work building an entire army out of thin air. Vast fields were lined with rows of inflatable Sherman tanks, crafted from rubber and painted to reflect sunlight convincingly from above. Wooden aircraft, replicas of C-47s and Spitfires, were arranged at fake airfields, complete with tire tracks carved into the mud by hand. Trucks circled endlessly, stirring dust clouds that could be seen for miles, then returned under cover of night to repeat the illusion the next day. To make the deception believable to enemy reconnaissance, the British created the illusion of constant movement. They built fake supply depots, fuel dumps, and ammunition stores, often constructed from plywood. From the air, one RAF officer later recalled, it looked entirely real. We even had men moving crates that contained nothing but air. The Royal Corps of Signals added to the show with carefully coordinated radio traffic. Operators maintained entire networks of wireless transmissions, simulating the chatter of multiple divisions. German listening posts along the French coast intercepted these signals and fell for them completely. Meanwhile, in Dover and Folkestone, dummy landing craft bobbed along the shoreline, tethered to moorings made of sand-filled barrels. To Luftwaffe pilots, they appeared as entire fleets waiting to cross the channel. The Allies knew that Germany's reconnaissance capabilities were limited by fuel shortages and Allied air superiority, so even the simplest tricks went unchallenged. Every photograph taken from a German spy plane became another layer in the growing illusion. The deception wasn't confined to props. Thousands of troops across southern England were briefed on their supposed roles in the upcoming Calais invasion. Soldiers wore distinctive insignia of non-existent divisions. Clerks produced fake movement orders. Even pubs and train stations were seeded with loose talk, subtle hints designed for German ears. MI5's double-cross agents, embedded deep within enemy spy networks, reported the same narrative back to Berlin. Patton's army was ready, and Calais would fall. A major figure in this radio theatre was Juan Pujol Garcia, codenamed Garbo. From his London apartment, Garbo transmitted a steady stream of false reports through secret channels to the Abwehr, convincing them that he managed an entire network of sub-agents across Britain. His messages were precise, detailed, and utterly believable. When Garbo wrote that the 3rd Airborne Division has moved from Norwich to Dover, German analysts recorded it as fact. The beauty of Fortitude lay in its consistency. Every lie supported another. By May 1944, Hitler's own intelligence summaries reflected the deception's success. Reports from the OKW, Oberkommando der Wehrmacht, described massive Allied build-ups in southeastern England, led by Patton's formidable army. Field Marshal Gerd von Rundstedt, Germany's commander-in-chief west, ordered reinforcements to Calais and along the Belgian border, exactly as the Allies hoped. Normandy, meanwhile, appeared lightly defended, almost ignored, but while the fake army stood proudly under the spring sun, the real invasion forces gathered quietly far to the west, in Devon, Dorset, and Cornwall. There, under heavy guard, men of the US 1st and 29th Infantry Divisions trained relentlessly for Operation Overlord. Every day, amphibious drills took place along the English Channel, but even these were hidden under the blanket of secrecy that Fortitude provided. If the Germans suspected anything, they dismissed it as diversionary exercises. The true brilliance of Fortitude South lay in its layering of half-truths. The Allies didn't just invent details, they manipulated existing intelligence gaps. They allowed small, believable mistakes to appear in intercepted messages. They let rumors spread naturally, ensuring the deception felt organic. In war, too much perfection could be suspicious. Imperfection, on the other hand, felt real. As D-Day approached, the Phantom Army's role became increasingly vital. Each fake division, each signal, each wooden plane served to buy precious time for the men preparing to cross the Channel. Every hour that German forces remained at Calais was an hour that could save lives in Normandy. Still, tension ran high among the planners in London. A single exposed secret, a misplaced report, could unravel the entire operation. The deception's architects, men like Colonel Bevan and General Frederick Morgan, watched anxiously as their invisible army faced its first true test. If the Germans discovered the ruse, the real invasion could turn into a slaughter. And yet, as the final days of May drew near, there was silence from Berlin. No troop movements, no alerts, no sign that Hitler suspected the truth. The illusion was working. In the quiet before D-Day, as Allied ships began to gather off the southern coast, General Patton made an appearance at Dover. German intelligence confirmed it. The invasion commander had arrived near the supposed front. The deception was complete. But in the early hours of June 6, 1944, the truth would land not at Calais, but on the beaches of Normandy. And the world would soon learn how a ghost army, made of rubber, wood, and radio waves, had fooled the Führer himself. While rubber tanks and wooden aircraft fooled German reconnaissance from above, the true strength of Operation Fortitude lay in something far more subtle: the art of controlled information. In 1944, intelligence wasn't just gathered by spies in trench coats or by pilots photographing enemy lines. It was filtered, shaped, and weaponized. And nowhere was that weapon more effective than inside MI5's double-cross system, a secret network of turned German agents who unwittingly became the Allies' most powerful storytellers. London was their stage. Behind the blackout curtains of quiet townhouses and nondescript offices, men and women of the British Security Service manipulated enemy intelligence in real time. When captured German agents were offered a choice between execution or cooperation, many chose survival. MI5 didn't just turn them, they rewrote their identities. Each agent was given a new codename, new instructions, and a new mission. Deceived their former masters for the good of the war effort. Among these double agents was the Spaniard Juan Pujol Garcia, codenamed Garbo. His codename came from his unmatched ability to act, to make lies feel truer than truth itself. Working with his British handler, Thomas Harris, Garbo constructed an entirely fictional network of 27 sub-agents, all of whom existed only in his imagination. Through coded messages and invisible ink, he sent the Abwehr hundreds of detailed reports, troop movements, convoy schedules, even weather observations, all designed to strengthen the illusion that the Allied invasion would strike Pas-de-Calais. Garbo's success lay in his patience. His intelligence was never too perfect, never too immediate. Often, he would deliberately send slightly outdated information so that the Germans trusted him more. This technique made his eventual reports about the Calais invasion seem authentic. As one MI5 officer later recalled, he built a house of lies brick by brick, and the Germans admired the craftsmanship. But Garbo wasn't alone. Other double-cross agents added layers to the deception. Roman Czerniawski, codenamed Brutus, a Polish Air Force officer captured in France, now operated as a British-controlled spy. His reports corroborated Garbo's, two sources confirming the same illusion from different angles. Tate, Zigzag, and Tricycle each played their part, feeding Berlin fragments of the same narrative. When pieced together, these fragments painted a single, convincing picture that the Allies' invasion force, under General Patton, was amassing in southeastern England for an attack on Calais. To ensure consistency, every message these agents sent was reviewed by the 20 Committee, known as XX Committee, a secret panel of British intelligence officers and military strategists who met weekly in London. Their motto, fittingly, was "Bicross, double cross." Under their supervision, every false telegram and radio signal became part of the same grand deception. This careful orchestration ensured that no lie contradicted another, a seamless web that even the sharpest Abwehr analyst couldn't untangle. By May 1944, the German High Command had received dozens of credible reports confirming Allied buildups in Kent and Essex. Abwehr case officers in Madrid, Lisbon and Stockholm all relayed the same intelligence, information secretly sourced from British double agents. In Berlin, analysts compiled these reports into a single assessment. The invasion would come at Calais. Hitler himself approved reinforcements to the 15th Army stationed there, while the 7th Army defending Normandy was left dangerously under strength still. Fortitude's architects knew that the slightest inconsistency could unravel everything. A single careless agent, a wrong signal, could expose the operation. To prevent this, MI5 embedded misdirection even within the lies. Some agents were instructed to report less activity in the south on specific days, suggesting that Allied movements were shifting. A clever way to maintain credibility while controlling the enemy's focus. Every whisper, every letter, every fake photograph served a purpose. The psychological stakes were immense. Intelligence officers understood that Hitler's belief in his own strategic genius could be turned against him. The Führer had long maintained that the Pas de Calais was the logical invasion site, the shortest crossing, the nearest to London, and the gateway to the Rhine. His generals hesitated to contradict him, fearing his rage. The Allies knew this weakness and exploited it mercilessly. Their deception didn't just trick German analysts, it reinforced Hitler's own biases. By June 1st, 1944, Garbo sent a message that would become legendary in intelligence circles. In it, he reported that a massive force near Dover was awaiting favourable weather to strike at the Pas de Calais. He added that other landings might occur elsewhere as diversions. To the Abwehr, this seemed like confirmation of their existing assumptions. To MI5, it was perfection. The German command would now interpret the real Normandy invasion as a feint. When Allied troops finally landed on June 6th, Garbo continued his deception flawlessly. He reported that his sub-agents had been unable to verify the scale of the landings and that the main operation had yet to begin. The Germans believed him. For days after D-Day, the 15th Army remained stationed near Calais, waiting for Patton's non-existent army to appear. Hitler himself refused to release reserves to Normandy, convinced that the true invasion was still to come. Historians would later say that Operation Fortitude bought the Allies nearly 2 vital weeks. Time that allowed the beachheads at Normandy to expand, to bring in tanks, supplies and reinforcements. Every man who survived those early days owed part of his life to the careful lies told in dark London offices. Yet even as Allied forces pushed inland, the secrecy surrounding the double-cross system remained absolute. The agents disappeared back into the shadows. Their true roles wouldn't be revealed for decades. Some died in obscurity, others, like Garbo, faded into civilian life, their names lost to time. But their deception had changed the course of history. And as the Allies gained a foothold in France, one chilling truth became clear. The Germans still believed the main invasion was yet to come. The lie was still alive, and now it was protecting the entire Allied advance. In the final days before D-Day, tension gripped every Allied command centre across Britain. The deception was in full swing. Radio traffic blazed, dummy tanks gleamed beneath camouflage nets, and German agents unknowingly amplified the lie. Yet as June 6, 1944, approached, one question haunted the architects of Operation Fortitude. Would the Germans believe it? Would Hitler take the bait? By the first week of June, Europe was on edge. From Norway to the Bay of Biscay, German defences bristled under the Atlantic Wall, a 2,400-mile chain of concrete bunkers, artillery positions, and beach obstacles built under the command of Field Marshal Erwin Rommel. Yet even Rommel, the desert fox, couldn't be everywhere at once. Intelligence reports had spread him thin, unsure whether the Allies would strike in Norway, the Low Countries, or northern France. Fortitude North had drawn German divisions away to Scandinavia. Fortitude South, the great illusion of the Calais invasion, was about to deliver its decisive blow. At Fortitude on June 6, 1944, the largest amphibious invasion in history began. Allied paratroopers dropped behind enemy lines in Normandy, and naval guns thundered across the Channel. Hitler was asleep in his mountain retreat at Berchtesgaden. His staff hesitated to wake him, and when they finally did, confusion reigned. The Führer's first reaction was disbelief. He was certain this was not the real invasion, but a diversion, a mere prelude to the main assault at Calais. That belief, carefully nurtured by months of Fortitude deception, held firm even as German radio intercepts confirmed the scale of the Normandy landings. Reports from the Abwehr insisted that the Calais region still harbored the true threat. Double agent Garbo reinforced this view, sending urgent messages that his sub-agents had confirmed a second, larger invasion was imminent near the Pas de Calais. His timing was perfect. Berlin received the message just hours after the D-Day assault began. Field Marshal Gerd von Rundstedt, commander of German forces in the West, requested immediate deployment of panzer divisions from the 15th Army to counterattack the Normandy beaches. But OKW headquarters denied his plea. Hitler's orders were explicit. The enemy is fainting. Hold the 15th Army in reserve for the real blow. The deception had done its work. Meanwhile, on the beaches of Normandy, chaos reigned. The 29th Infantry Division fought tooth and nail at Omaha Beach. The Canadians stormed Juno. The British pressed inland from Sword and Gold. Thousands died in the surf, under machine gun fire and exploding mortars. Every delay in German reinforcements meant more men reached the beaches alive. Every hour, the 15th Army remained idle in Calais was an hour won by Fortitude. By June 7th, the Allies had established a fragile beachhead, but the threat of counterattack loomed. Rommel, convinced Normandy was a diversion, had left his headquarters in Germany to celebrate his wife's birthday. When he finally returned 2 days later, he found confusion and paralysis. German command channels were flooded with contradictory orders. The deception had not only tied down troops, it had fractured decision-making at the highest levels. For nearly 2 weeks, Hitler clung to his belief. Daily reports from his intelligence staff, fed by MI5's false network, described continued buildup of enemy forces opposite Calais. Reconnaissance flights confirmed the presence of what appeared to be massive encampments, with landing craft still visible offshore. Luftwaffe pilots, desperate to confirm the truth, flew limited missions and photographed the same dummy installations that had deceived them for months. Even when reconnaissance revealed little movement, analysts interpreted the silence as proof that the invasion was still being prepared. By June 10th, the Wehrmacht's intelligence division issued a new summary. The Normandy landings represent a diversionary maneuver. The main invasion is expected in the Calais sector within the next few days. Hitler read it personally and scrawled his approval across the page. That single belief changed the course of the war. While Allied divisions poured through Normandy's hedgerows, the 15th Army, nearly 19 divisions strong, sat idle, waiting for orders that never came. The Germans had effectively trapped themselves in their own illusion. Not until late July, almost 7 weeks after D-Day, did Hitler finally release his reserves, far too late to stop the Allied breakout from Normandy. Historians have since debated whether Fortitude alone held the 15th Army at Calais, or whether Hitler's arrogance sealed his own fate. But the evidence is clear. Every signal, every decoy, every message from Garbo and his fellow agents reinforced the deception at precisely the right moment. In intelligence work, timing is everything, and in June 1944, it saved an invasion. In a declassified British memorandum written months later, Colonel John Bevan reflected on the tension of those days. We could not know whether the enemy believed us, only that they acted as if they did, and that was enough. For the Allied soldiers who fought through the bocage of Normandy, that belief meant survival. The shadow army of Fortitude had done its job. But for those who created it, the operation was far from over. The deception had to continue, even as the Allies advanced deeper into France. As the beaches stabilized and supplies poured ashore, the illusion still had a purpose: to keep German forces locked away from the front, waiting for a phantom army that would never come. And somewhere in London, under flickering lamplight, MI5's operators prepared their next messages to Berlin, ensuring that, in Hitler's mind, the invasion of Calais was still only days away. Behind the apparent chaos of D-Day, another battle was being waged in quiet offices, dim apartments, and secret safe houses, the battle of intelligence and subterfuge. Agents like Juan Pujol Garcia, codenamed Garbo, worked tirelessly to maintain the illusion that the main Allied invasion had yet to strike. For Garbo, each message was a calculated risk. One misstep could reveal the network he had painstakingly built, and with it, the lives of his fictional sub-agents and the credibility of the entire operation. Garbo's network of imaginary operatives was perhaps the most audacious element of Fortitude. He invented 27 agents scattered across Britain, each with their own specialties: reconnaissance, sabotage, signal interception. Every report he sent to the Abwehr included corroborating observations from these sub-agents, creating a level of detail so rich that German intelligence officers had no reason to doubt it. For instance, he reported that the 6th Airborne Division was positioned in Kent and Sussex, training intensively for a supposed landing at Calais. In reality, the 6th Airborne had been moved to Normandy weeks earlier for Operation Tonga, a critical mission to capture bridges behind enemy lines. The German officers never knew the truth. Every communication Garbo sent was carefully timed. On the night of June 6th, he reported that paratroopers were moving near Dover and that the main attack was imminent. This delayed the German response in Normandy by hours, perhaps days, as Hitler's command waited for the real invasion to arrive. Even as the Allies struggled in the surf at Omaha, Utah, Gold, Juno, and Sword Beaches, the Phantom Army in southeast England occupied German forces' attention and tied them to a front that did not exist. Yet the risks were personal. Garbo moved through London under constant threat of discovery. If the Abwehr suspected deception, his life would have been forfeit. Each message he sent could have revealed inconsistencies. British handlers monitored his transmissions for accuracy and timing, ensuring no mistake would unravel the narrative. The psychological strain of creating and sustaining an entire fictitious army, while knowing lives hung in the balance, was immense. Other agents contributed to the orchestration of Fortitude. Roman Chernyavsky, Brutus, and other double-cross operatives continued to send supporting intelligence that reinforced Garbo's reports. Their accounts included fabricated troop movements, dummy installations, and falsified logistical reports. MI5's meticulous oversight ensured that every narrative thread converged on a single conclusion. Calais was the primary target. In Berlin, the reports were assembled, cross-checked, and ultimately trusted. An entire enemy command structure deceived by stories that existed only in the minds of British intelligence officers. The impact of these efforts was profound. For nearly 2 weeks after D-Day, the German 15th Army remained entrenched near Calais, immobilized by the belief that a major invasion was yet to come. Hitler, convinced of the deception, refused to release reserves to the battle-hardened Normandy front. The Allies gained invaluable time to consolidate their positions, establish supply lines, and push inland. Every decision delayed by the illusion directly saved lives on the beaches. And in the hedgerows of France, the strategic brilliance of Fortitude lay not only in misleading the enemy, but also in exploiting their decision-making psychology. Hitler's obsession with Calais, his faith in Patton, and his reliance on intercepted intelligence all worked against him. The Allies didn't just deceive the German high command. They anticipated how the Germans would think, predicting hesitation and exploiting it with surgical precision. Every false report and staged movement was part of a larger pattern, a meticulously woven web of deception that extended from Dover to the highest echelons of Berlin. Even as Allied troops advanced into Normandy and secured vital positions, the story of Fortitude continued to unfold in parallel. Agents like Garbo maintained the illusion that reinforcements were poised to strike Calais, keeping the German army locked in place. The lie persisted, ensuring that operational momentum was preserved. Without this invisible support, the invasion might have encountered far greater resistance, and the bloody price at the beaches could have been even higher. Yet the individuals behind the deception remained in the shadows. After D-Day, Garbo vanished from public view, living quietly under an assumed identity. His network, as elaborate as it had been, disappeared without fanfare. The double-cross system itself, one of Britain's most extraordinary wartime achievements, remained classified for decades. The courage of those who wove lies with such precision was matched only by the calculated patience required to keep the German command in the dark. Operation Fortitude, therefore, was not merely a tactical success, but a triumph of human ingenuity, psychology and courage. It demonstrated that warfare could be fought with intellect and perception, as effectively as with weapons. The Phantom Army, invisible yet terrifyingly real to the enemy, had changed the course of the invasion and, ultimately, the war itself. As the Normandy beaches stabilized and Allied forces pushed deeper into France, the spectre of the Ghost Army still loomed large in Berlin. Hitler's forces, paralyzed by misinformation, had unwittingly ceded the initiative to the Allies. And in the quiet corners of London, the agents who had orchestrated this grand illusion knew that their work, dangerous, invisible, and utterly crucial, had only just reached its first climax. The war on the ground was now joined by a war in shadows, where information, timing, and perception could determine the fate of nations. And the question lingered. If an entire army could exist only on paper, could such ingenuity be applied again to reshape history elsewhere? By mid-June 1944, the consequences of Operation Fortitude had become undeniably clear. The Allied foothold in Normandy was secure, and yet the German command remained immobilized, clinging to a deception that had cost them precious time. The Phantom 1st US Army Group, led by the ever-feared General Patton, continued to loom in their minds, a ghostly presence convincing Berlin that the main invasion had yet to arrive. It was a masterclass in psychological warfare, executed with such precision that even decades later, historians marvel at its audacity. Behind the scenes, the planners of Fortitude were already reflecting on the operation's monumental success. Colonel John Bevan, head of the London Controlling Section, noted in a wartime report that the key was not merely tricking the enemy, but predicting how they would think. By understanding Hitler's expectations, obsessions, and cognitive biases, the Allies had created an illusion that the German high command could not see through. Even as their real forces bled and fought in Normandy, it was a victory of intellect and strategy as much as it was of guns and men. Yet for all the success, questions lingered. Many of the agents who orchestrated the deception vanished from public record. Juan Pujol Garcia, Garbo, lived out his post-war life in quiet anonymity, his exploits classified and unrecognized for decades. Others disappeared completely, leaving behind fragments of stories that only surfaced in declassified files years later. The identities, methods, and communications of these operatives became historical puzzles, slowly pieced together by researchers decades after the war. Their contributions were invisible on the battlefield, but lethal in their effect. The human cost, too, was stark. While Fortitude saved thousands of Allied lives by delaying German reinforcements, the men storming the beaches of Normandy endured unimaginable peril. Casualties were heavy. At Omaha Beach alone, over 2,000 American soldiers fell on June 6th. Yet the success of the deception ensured that the scale of loss could have been far worse. By tying down the German 15th Army near Calais, the Phantom threat allowed the Allies to establish and expand beachheads, secure vital ports, and begin the liberation of France with greater momentum and fewer reinforcements lost in futile counterattacks. Operation Fortitude also illuminated the power of intelligence and psychological operations in modern warfare. It demonstrated that wars could be won not only by brute force, but by understanding the enemy's mindset and manipulating perception. Decades later, military scholars would cite Fortitude as a defining example of strategic deception, one that reshaped doctrines in intelligence and operational planning. The operation confirmed that information could be a weapon, and that controlling what the enemy believes could be as decisive as controlling territory. Yet the story of Fortitude is not just one of strategy and innovation. It is a story of risk, patience, and extraordinary courage. Agents working alone in London apartments or behind enemy lines took lives into their hands with every transmission. Their efforts relied on secrecy, discipline, and nerves of steel. A single misstep could have exposed the network and undone months of preparation. That they succeeded so flawlessly speaks to the meticulous planning, foresight, and dedication of all involved, from the planners in Whitehall to the operatives across Europe. As the Allies pushed further into France, capturing towns and liberating villages, the German command remained fixated on a phantom invasion. Entire divisions remained idle, waiting for Patton's ghost army that would never arrive. In Berlin, Hitler's disbelief and misjudgments compounded the strategic advantage the Allies had gained, demonstrating the profound effect of a carefully orchestrated deception on the course of a major conflict. Ultimately, Operation Fortitude was more than a military ruse. It was a pivotal turning point in World War II. It exemplified how ingenuity, psychology, and coordination could tip the balance of power, and it highlighted the silent, invisible battles that occur behind the scenes in war. The deception saved lives, altered German decisions, and ensured that D-Day and the subsequent liberation of Western Europe could succeed. Yet even today, the story retains an air of mystery. Many agents' true identities were never revealed, and some records remain incomplete. How did Berlin truly interpret each signal, each fake troop movement, each forged report? What if a single error had unraveled the illusion at the critical moment? These unanswered questions linger, a reminder that even the most successful operations are built on fragile threads of human intelligence, courage, and ingenuity. In the end, Fortitude stands as a testament to the extraordinary power of deception in warfare, the ghost army that never existed, the messages that carried false truths, and the meticulous planning that fooled one of history's most formidable leaders, all converged to change the course of history. It was a victory born not only on the beaches of Normandy, but in the minds of men. An operation where perception became reality, and where the invisible hand of intelligence shaped the fate of nations. And so, the legacy of Fortitude endures, a story of courage, ingenuity, and the shadows behind the storm. The secret operation that saved lives, misled a tyrant, and altered the course of the Second World War.